I just want to credit my co-author here. This is Julian Savulescu. Julian is the Uhiro Chair of Practical Ethics at the University of Oxford, and he's the co-author on this here book. This is the British version. It's slightly different from the version in the US, which is just called Love Drugs, The Chemical Future of Relationships. They're the same on the inside, but have slightly different covers. And what I thought I would do is just read a couple of highlights from the first chapter. This will just take a few minutes, and then I'll carry forward in something more like a conventional talk. But I just want to give you a sketch of what generally you're going to encounter in the book, and then get into some of the more ethical details, and then we'll just open up for questions. There should be a chat box that people can use to type in questions as they occur to you. So here's a bit from the book. Oxford ethicists promote MDMA to combat divorce. At least that's what a blogger at Dose Nation said we were doing when we first started writing about the chemical enhancement of love and relationships. The blogger was referring to an interview we'd done with The Atlantic, where we argued that certain psychoactive substances, including MDMA, the key ingredient in the party drug ecstasy, might help some couples improve their connection if used in the right way. The truth is, we were not promoting the use of MDMA outright. We were calling for research into this possibility while exploring its ethical implications for individuals and society. But this time, our call for research is more urgent. MDMA, along with psychedelic drugs like psilocybin from magic mushrooms and even LSD, are moving quickly into the center of mainstream medicine. Phrases like paradigm shift are beginning to creep into the titles of research reviews on the science of drug-assisted psychotherapy. Our Atlantic interview came out in 2013. This was 2 years after the first pilot study on MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, made its way to publication. PTSD is an often disabling condition that can develop in response to violence, including exposure to killing and bloodshed in war zones. But trauma affects more than individual survivors. It affects friends, family, and romantic partners, including spouses. Some spouses can hardly recognize the person they married, a once familiar life partner now prone to unpredictable panic attacks, anger, and even physical aggression. This raises a simple but important point. Successful treatment of PTSD, by whatever means, can have positive implications for relationships, but this shouldn't be a side effect or afterthought. Medical research needs to take interpersonal factors, the space between people, into account, from the initial design of studies to the collection of data, all the way through to the write-up of the final report. In this book, we focus on romantic relationships, but the point holds much more generally. Introducing a drug or other medication into the life of an individual also introduces it into the lives of those who love and care for them. Under current treatment norms, the effect on others happens indirectly. But what if it happened directly, with intention? What if the goal was to improve people's lives along a relational axis? Romantic partnerships might then become a worthwhile focal point when considering certain drug-based interventions. This brings us to MDMA and why it seems to show such promise. It temporarily reduces hair trigger fear responses by working directly on emotional centers of the brain. Objectively, it causes the release of serotonin and other neurotransmitters and keeps them in play in the clefts between synapses. Subjectively, as one writer put it, it imbues users with a deep sense of love and acceptance of themselves and others, the perfect conditions for trauma therapy. Findings from the early MDMA studies bore this out. Over 2/3 of participants suffering from chronic treatment-resistant PTSD no longer met the criteria for the disorder 12 months later. Standard therapies do not come close to this degree of effectiveness. And then one more little section here. When we started our work almost a decade ago, MDMA was still mostly known as a legally forbidden shortcut to dance floor euphoria, and the risk of serious harm in such contexts is much greater than in therapeutic settings, up to and including death, as we will see. As an additional hurdle, our proposal that MDMA might one day be used as an aid in couples counseling, including for clients without a psychiatric disorder, was not so obviously within the realm of conventional medicine as a cure for PTSD. So our Atlantic interview turned some heads. Two ethicists, of all people, from a conservative old British university, of all places, talking publicly about the potential non-medical benefits of a currently illegal drug. It wasn't what people expected. But it shouldn't have been so surprising. After all, the question of whether a drug or anything should be illegal in the first place is an ethical question, and current laws are not always adequately justified. The same goes for the lines that get drawn between medical and non-medical substances. Whether we call a drug medicine or regard it as a form of recreation or try to harness its effects to improve our lives, what we refer to in this book as enhancement, it makes no difference to the molecules in question. They work on the brain however they work and produce whatever effects they produce, good, bad, both, or in between. Often, the legal or medical status of a drug has more to do with quirks of history or politics than with a sound understanding of its actual benefits and risks. Does a drug-induced mood lift count as medicine? If you suffer from depression and got the drug from your doctor, yes. If you don't suffer from the depression and got the drug from your dealer, no. But the boundaries are blurrier than they first appear. In this book, we'll explore the ethics of using drugs for relationship enhancement, breaking out of the individual-centered, disease-focused model of modern medicine. And whether or not our specific proposal catches on, there are already signs that society is on the fast track to a drug revolution. We think it will start with greater acceptance of mind-altering substances as treatments for recognized psychiatric disorders like PTSD. It will move from there to the use of such substances to help people in general improve their lives and relationships from whatever psychological baseline they happen to be at, including some that would now be considered healthy or normal.